Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And today I want to talk about something extremely important to those who are very serious about manifesting their biggest desires. This is the topic of robotic affirmations. And this is in reference to the popular inundation of this technique. But I want to show you, by scrutinizing that technique and comparing it to the innate power within you that you can activate and utilize through a single statement, you can actively trade saying a single phrase thousands of times for manifesting thousands of things by saying them one time. This is based upon not only my personal experience, but also thousands of others who have put this to the test as well. So if you are sick of obsessively repeating phrases thousands of times to see results, this is for you. If you would like to learn the systematic approach, the way to observe the common denominators between what works, to take a data-driven approach to manifestation, to use the least effort to get the best results, then this is the video for you. But before we begin, please hit the like button. It'll do something to the algorithm so that others who would not be able to see this video will be able to see this video. Also, hit the subscribe button if you like these meticulous, broken down explanations, systematic strategies, and methods on how to manifest your desire in a systematic, data-driven, predictable way that works every single time. So hit that subscribe button for that. And also every Tuesday and Friday and many days in between, I release content, but Tuesdays and Fridays are my videos. And so hit the bell icon if you want to stay notified for that. Oftentimes I will do premieres to chat with me live. So hit the bell icon for that, and also download the workbooks associated with these videos that I usually have on the description, which take you through an approach that by the end of completing that workbook, you'll have implemented this process to manifest your desires. So let's jump into this and explain the robotic affirmation, where it comes from, my personal experience with them, which has been a lot, and the means and ways that I have discovered to radically alter my life through what I found was the cheat code to manifesting, ways that have helped thousands and thousands of people manifest thousands of things. So the robotic affirmation has been made very popular recently. And this is something that people will probably immediately want to hear, the people who are kind of on the edge to hear what I have to say about them or whatever. They can work. Years ago, before I began to test systematically, I used to use them. I used to get results with them. I would, in the exact way that I was taught, which was essentially to decide what I wanted. And oftentimes in this case, it had to do with my self-concept. It had to do with the way that I was perceived. And it also had to do with my core desires, the things that I wanted to manifest. I was to determine the statement as if I already have it, as if it's already true, and then repeat this statement thousands of times, or as many times as humanly possible, really. And the theory was, and still continues to be to this day, that through the theory of neuroplasticity, you will ingrain a pathway within the brain that will ultimately force you to believe the statement that you wanted to believe, thereby becoming true. So whatever it is that you wanted, whether it be your beliefs of having great relationships, or the relationship specifically with a person, or your health, or your weight, or your happiness, or your wealth, this is a process that is taught to this day that in theory does exactly as I just explained it to do. But there's a problem with this. There's a couple problems with this. The first one is this is actually a a variation, a misinterpretation of cognitive behavioral therapy. This is not manifesting. So neuroplasticity effectively states that because our thoughts create grooves and pathways in our brain, that if we theoretically, through habit, were to recite something many times, you will create a new groove in your brain. However, the flaw with this is that there is no proof that those grooves and those pathways actually change ways of thinking. They will create a new groove where the thought occurred, but that does not guarantee that the thought will continue down that pathway once you stop putting in the effort. The other problem is that this is not manifesting. Manifesting is something entirely different. For many, many, many thousands of affirmations that I repeated within my mind, I was actually diagnosed with OCD back in 2013 because of my obsessive, relentless repetition, but nothing really changed. I would see a thing here or there. Someone would recite back to me the thing that I've stated, which, although, can happen in many other ways. So what I discovered was, through accidental approach, really, was, and it fits perfectly within the realm of manifestation, within the realm of yielding or going with the flow or not using force or not meeting with resistance. You can, in a way that is dramatically easier, simpler. I'm talking about in the realm of saying things one time, you can have a greater impact. This has been systematically proven, but I want to tell you first the story of how I discovered this. So, as I just alluded to you, back years ago, in 2012, my brother was killed tragically. This threw me on a series of events that instilled addiction and pain and trouble. And essentially what happened was I ended up in a cult, which is a religious cult that talks about belief, that talks about the interpretation of the Bible, the Hebrew, the Greek. So a lot of the things that I've learned and that I teach you today come from that part of my life, albeit in a different light. But the problem was some of the things that were taught, like pray without ceasing, or you must believe, caused me to continuously think that I was doing something wrong if I wasn't doing it. So I ended up in a rehab after the death of my brother, and I went there to go in to see the in-house psychiatrist, and they asked me what was going on. And essentially they knew why I was there in the first place, but asked me a little bit about what was going on in my head. And I explained that I was praying without ceasing, which was essentially affirming, is what I was doing repeatedly. As it said, I thought, in scripture. I was, afraid that I wasn't believing, all of these things. So that's an actual by the book OCD. That's unhealthy, and it actually drove me near madness. I've come to find that experience, so this is back all the way in 2013, that is unhealthy, and it caused immense conflict within the individual, including myself. But not only that, but I'm sure many of you who are viewers of this have also experienced that deep sense of struggle that, man, I'm not doing these affirmations exactly today. I haven't hit the amount that I'm supposed to do. So with that said, it was advised to me to stop doing that. But the problem is that it was life or death. Life or death. I had no choice but to carry on the path to figure out a way to remove my internal turmoil and conflict. And I'm not talking about with the affirmations. I'm talking about dealing with this sudden and tragic death of my brother. And now adding a monkey on my back with addiction, opioid addiction. And I'm talking about friends dying left and right. So I had no choice but to move forward and figure out another way to change my life. And that's why I find this journey extremely, extremely important. And I, with the highest regard, I really value individuals learning and utilizing manifestation to achieve their goals. From that point, 2012 is when I first started testing and experimenting with manifestation. And it's continued all the way up until this day. Usually when I start my videos, I talk about how I've systematically tested tens of thousands of successful manifestations. But here's the thing. If I was, say for example, stuck in the process of utilizing affirmations tens of thousands of times for one affirmation, how many would I be able to get done throughout those years? Not many. So this is what happened. I knew that I was killing myself by reciting these things daily. I had developed OCD, was diagnosed, and was medicated for it. Luckily, I had some internal strength to stop the obsessive thinking related to what I thought was going to give me my desires, which was to, be happier, deal with my insecurity issues, deal with my addiction issues, my relationship issues, which is specifically the core. Those were the banes of my existence. Even to this day, go back and talk to anyone who's ever, if you're from the United States, it's way more prevalent, but talk to anyone who has ever had an addiction problem, who has ever been to treatment, and they tell you straight away that there's no cure. So I did not accept that. I did everything they said, even in the psych wards that I went to, even in the rehabs that I went to back then. They taught me that essentially that modified version of cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, let me tell you, that is not, however, you will hear that from certain people, but that is not actually cognitive behavioral therapy. That approach, that spin on affirming, which essentially is to reason your way through a problem, determine the statement that is the solution to that problem. That works. That is CBT. That is the reframing and redirecting of the mind to have a different understanding. That can also change your state of consciousness. But the repetition with the theory of neuroplasticity does not work. And I'll explain to you what does work now. What happened eventually was, on this path to determining what I needed to do to change my life, to be free from the addiction that they said I would never be free from, to get clear of my anxious attachment style, my insecure attachment style, and to just have a happy relationship, I continued systematically testing. So, as I said before, if I couldn't do tens of thousands of affirmations for a single affirmation, how was I going to drastically change all these aspects of my life? I found a way to change doing thousands of repetitions of one affirmation for one repetition of thousands of different imaginal acts and assumptions and beliefs and affirming statements. This is not bull. Go into my comments. Those individuals who have been following along with me for years have already put this to the test, and they can attest that it works, and it changes your entire perception of what manifesting actually is, how easy it is, how one single statement can effectively change your entire reality. And not only can it, it will. So this is what happened. As I was on my journey, again, systematically testing, I started that in 2012 and continued on and never let up. Eventually, I came to a point where I had realized that I had never felt important. Many of you have heard this story before, but for those who have not, this is a very important part of this story with decrees and assumptions and singular statements that create reality. So what happened was, I wrote down on a piece of paper, and I did this without intention. There was no intention behind it. It was more of just a brainstorming thing. I wrote down, I am important. I feel important. People treat me like I'm important. I believe it was those variations. There was very few. It was just 2 or 3 items that I wrote down on that list. That was it. I closed it. It was more, like I said, of a brainstorm. The next day, I went to the coffee shop that I had been going to every day for the past 6 years. And when I walked up to that counter, I talked to the same barista that I had talked to every day for the past 6 years, except for when she was off or when I didn't show up. But literally, she looked at me and she said, and I kid you not, she said, "Wow, you look really important." I was taken aback. I was amazed. I was like, wait, what just happened? Nothing had changed. Right? The only thing that had changed was I had written down a single statement on a piece of paper, closed the book. I didn't imagine it. I didn't feel it. I didn't do anything. So effectively, would it be possible to only do something one time and it works? So I had to go back and figure out what just happened. And essentially, day in and day out, I began to test different statements, writing down a single desire that I had one time and one time only. And what happened was, like clockwork, every single time it manifested. I thought this could not be real. What about all the repetition? What about all of the extreme feelings and emotions that I have to emit whilst undergoing this process? And so I continued along. It never failed. And essentially what that turned into was what I teach today as the list method. I've started calling it the list method exercise recently so that it gives more clarity to what this exercise is. And this is the way to stop doing affirmations thousands of times and only having to do them one time. You will get the same, if not better, results. So robotically, the reason it doesn't have as much impact as it would have, say, if you write something down or imagine something one time, is robotic essentially, so first of all, the majority of people who are claiming they're doing robotic affirmations are actually saying they're repeating the same thing over and over. That's not the same as a robotic affirmation. Robotic affirmation means, in other words, rote or mechanical, which means without emotion, completely void of emotion. It would essentially mean saying something in a different language over and over. That's not what's happening. Even in, say, Neville Goddard's teachings, who teaches strictly against the repetition of a singular phrase over and over. He calls it it's not what he calls it, it's what the Bible calls a vain repetition. Even he talks about the internal speaking of something, a singular time, but with emotion. It's absolutely effective and important. He talks about with affirming statements, he calls them decrees. Decrees, which is also in scripture, it says, you shall decree a thing, and it will happen unto you, and its light will guide your way. And this is the key. This is why a single imaginal act, a single statement will work, is that manifestation is not through force. It's not through effort. That repetitive way, although it may seem scientifically sound, is completely different than the approach that is necessary to impress the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind does not do good through coercion or force or resistance. So in other words, this is why a single statement, one time, focused on intently for even a split second, had much more impact than one statement said thousands of times. Equal, if not more, impact. Ultimately, all I had to do, and this is what I discovered was the key to it, was the focusing upon writing it down. Handwriting, by the way, there's a difference because of what I'm going to explain. There's a singleness of focus. When you are speaking internally and focusing on what you're speaking, nothing else is allowed in the mind. But now, the thing is when you're thinking a thought on repeat and you're not thinking about what you're saying, it is possible to get distracted. It's why you can have a song in your head and still talk to someone at the same time. But when you are focusing directly on the action of writing something down, you are not only saying it in your mind, you're looking at it, you're writing it, it's slow, it's meticulous, it's the only contents of your mind. That is why I believe, come to the conclusion that this works effectively, is the single one-time effort of saying something once as if it's already true will be more impactful than not. So using resistance and repetition essentially is force. If you're having negative thoughts and are attempting to undercut them or replace them, the key is not to combat them. That's force. The key, along with all manifestation, is to not go against the resistance. It's not to use force. It's to yield. Your subconscious is blocked by the conscious mind. That's the guardian, the gatekeeper. And the way that you will allow something into the subconscious mind, which is the medium to create, is through the road of least resistance, the path of least resistance. So when you're having a negative internal thought, combating it with something opposite is actually the opposite of what we should be doing. Those thoughts are actually manifestations. Those negative thoughts that are automatically appearing out of nowhere that are causing problems are manifestations of the state that you're in, of the belief that you have, of the assumption that's executing repeatedly over and over. The key then is to undercut that assumption and replace it with a new assumption. And as a result, an impression is made, and this is not done through the repetition, this is done feelingly or through an experience of the statement itself. And what will happen is the external world will change, like the woman who told me I'm important. I didn't feel it yet. But what happened was, that was the bridge of incidents. The same way as when you imagine something and a bridge happens that moves you there naturally and effortlessly, does that not sound very strikingly similar to what we would be doing by instructing the subconscious to create through a statement? It's exactly the same thing. What we don't do is force. Force is that repetitive argument against that statement in the mind. So you take what you would consider to be the source of that repetitive negative thought. I'm not good enough. He's going to choose someone else. The belief or assumption could be something to the effect of, people always leave me. I'm always chosen second. That is the belief that's creating those thoughts. So you construct a single statement, people love me, people, there has to be an opposite. So it would be something to the effect of, people always choose me first. So notice how I'm not saying I am chosen. I am saying people choose me first. And the reason for that I described in a prior short, which is to talk about the fact that even though I love myself, that doesn't mean you love me. So it doesn't equate that I'm to say I am chosen for you to choose me or I feel chosen. We have to say people choose me. People do this. My lovers choose this in a broad way. And once you decide what that statement is, you can either, there's two parts that you, really a few things, but in this case, we're talking about the replacement of an affirmation. So you would write that down from the perspective of already having it fulfilled, such as my partners always hold me in the highest regard. My partners always remain with me consistently. My partners always remain with me faithfully, forever and ever, such and so forth. You singly do that one time. That's all you need to do. As long as you're focused upon it, that is all that needs to be done. Opposed to that, or alongside with that, or aside to that, what you could do is internally, this is a thing that I do when I have chatter in my mind. This is how I overcome the problem with related to resistance within my mind directed towards my statements that I'm trying to say. Sometimes the chatter in my mind does not allow me to have a clear mind to say a statement. It will have no effect at that point. I need to be focused on it. I need to be experiencing it from the point of already having it. That's what you're doing when you're affirming. You're not attempting to believe something. You are, by nature and design of how manifesting works, you are attempting for a moment to imagine you are that person. That's all you're doing. Remember, if you're trying to push a belief in your mind, you will be doing that permanently. But if you, for a second, pretend you are the person, you're saying that statement as if you are that person and can experience it in loud and clear in my mind. I say the command as a decree. A decree is a command. It's a lawful command. It is I decree, by the King of England decrees. It's like a statement that's extremely lawful and definite and certain. And that's the way you want to say this thing in your mind. And if you do that and it's loud and clear enough, sometimes, now this is where the repetition can be effective. And I'm talking about just a couple times, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Sometimes in my mind, if the chatter is there, you want to repeat this phrase 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, louder and clearer each time you're repeating it in your mind until you get to say 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and it's loud and clear in the totality of your mind. And that is it. What happens is, and what will happen is, you're not going to be changed instantly. Remember, instilling beliefs through repetition means nothing. It's what comes after. You impress the subconscious with the image of the wish fulfilled. In this case, that's a statement that you're speaking when you have your desire, a single statement that you have. So again, when you're writing this thing down, you're not looking at it like I'm trying to force this into my mind. You should be looking at it like I am now temporarily jumping into the future and I'm going to write this true statement down. I am rich. money comes to me easily and effortlessly. I always receive large sums of money. So as you can see, you can create variations of statements one single time, and that will completely transform your reality. With the list method, essentially what happens is eventually all of them will come true. And likewise, beliefs. So take, for example, the story I was giving you throughout this. I was in despair. I kept getting into trouble. I was facing addiction. I was teetering upon death. I just lost my brother. That was a tremendous tragedy. Effectively, I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of beliefs. I could name them all to you. I still have the notebooks where I changed them all systematically. It was the writing down one after the next, the belief that I wish was true a single time, and I would systematically watch as my reality would shape one person, proving it to me one thing at a time. That is the replacement of the 1,000-time affirmation with a single statement, a single decree. That is the technique, the ideology, that is the philosophy that you should be using in order to create grand change. Just in summary, you take what you want. It could be a statement, it can be a belief, it could be a thing that you want, a person that you want, etc. It doesn't matter. You write that thing down from the perspective as if you are already that person who's writing it down. I have received this. I am this. People treat me this way. Upon doing that, that will impress the subconscious. You can continuously and systematically go one after the other. This is how I manifest. This is how my clients manifest, and it works every single time. Effectively, that impression will cause a chain reaction to unfold in the external world. You will not believe what you have written down yet. That is not how manifesting works. That is something entirely different. Then the world will change. People will treat you in a way, they will act in a way, your specific person will act in a way that will force you to move down a path that will eventually cause you to believe that thing, that will cause that thing to be true. It's the same thing as an imaginal act. Do not use resistance. Do not use force. Yield to the feeling or the experience of the wish fulfilled. One imaginal act packed with truth, experience, and emotion and I stake my life and experience on this. One imaginal act, one statement, one decree with feeling and emotion cited one time within the mind will have more power, more impact, more effectiveness than a statement rattled off 1,000 times, 10,000 times. I know this because I've done this for years and years under the thumb of affirmations that are repeated mindlessly. I received some results. But under the freedom of a single decree statement, one time I have manifested thousands and thousands and thousands of things. So watch back and listen to the part where I talk about how to write this stuff down properly and watch the way your world changes. Also, check out the comments, specifically not looking at the people who are going to say, oh, this isn't true. Look at the people that you already think that. It doesn't matter. Look at the people who said this is true. Those are the people you want to look at, the people who are free. I've got nothing to lose from this. This is setting you free, just the way it set me free from OCD, which I no longer have, and free from insecurity, free from doubt, free from my attachment problems, free from relationship issues, free from addiction, which is impossible to cure. This works. So thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell icon. Download the workbook, and I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.